What's up guys, welcome back. Today changing the soft top on the Miata, and the best way to do that is to take the whole frame off. So that's where we're going to get started. So I'm going to get to Now, it's not in terrible shape. It does have some breaks along the seam, which don't really do anything except look ugly. There are a few small holes. There is one big tear, but the main reason I want to change it is how cloudy the back window is. You can fix that, but I don't really feel like it. I don't feel like it's worth it, being that it's, got the tears and everything. And it's also black, and just like my glove box latch, I want to change it to tan. So let's get started with the first step, which is removing the interior plastic behind the door and the cross brace if you have one installed. And I use a socket for these two special bolts, and then repeat on both sides of the car. Remove the cover on this cross brace to get to these bolts. Carefully pry this little piece out and don't lose it. Unscrew these completely. There is a special tool you can get for these, but I just use a flathead screwdriver and sometimes needle nose pliers. That's what works for me. After popping all that loose, remove some more plastic rivets. And to break these side panels loose, pull away right at where this slit is in the plastic, and then directly at the bottom. This plastic gets fragile over time, so just be careful with it. There is a plastic centering peg at the top, so a bit of gentle persuasion is needed to separate these. Using both hands is recommended. Once you put the top up, it'll reveal even more plastic rivets to take out. Then these plastic bump stop things, they have Phillips screws in them, and another on the other side. Now take out all these 10mm nuts along the rail. Pry these side rails off first, then the middle rail. These three 12mm bolts on both sides are what hold the frame to the body. and go ahead and pop the rain rail and top apart all the way around. If you can get help for this part, that'll be way easier, but it can be done by yourself. With the top laid upside down and open on a clean space, it's time to disassemble it. I start by removing these two Phillips screws. Then carefully pry out the weather strips. I use some needle nose pliers to pull these two plastic push rivets out from the top. Then remove the Phillips screws all the way around to remove these rails. Once both sides are finished, the front rail has a lot of Phillips screws to remove as well. All right, real quick, let's step into the future and go over a couple mistakes. I made a big mistake in using this frame, which I will go over more at the end of the video, but I'm gonna step in a couple times to go over a few small mistakes. And one of those is gonna have to do with attaching the sides. So here and here, there are probably some rivets from the factory. And then if you come around to the back side of that spot and then straight up, there is a spot here and here, which this rivet's actually still in there. But there were some rivets from the factory there. The top that I changed had no rivets in it at all. Go ahead and pull both sides off of the frame, lay them down. Pry the end of the spring open to remove it from the cable. Okay, and another small mistake that I want to show you has to do with these cables that go along the sides. Now this, of course, hooks to the spring that goes in the back. So it comes up through here, and then this part connects here in the front. So here, where it's riveted in to the top, you have the outer rail, and the way that you see mine in the video is with the cable this way, which puts it towards the inside, and that actually runs along the bottom of this. But you can see there's this little indentation where the cable is supposed to ride, and so it's supposed to actually be towards the outside of the vehicle and riveted, which will put the cable riding along this guide. So I did have to go back and drill out my rivets on both sides and swap it around because they were done incorrectly in the past. After prying the top off the front, pull the cables out of the top, leaving them riveted to the frame. And on these center bars, the two in the middle, the one in the back, the new top that I had came with Velcro. The old top was also Velcroed. And then on the center ones here and here, the top actually has these little flaps, and they will actually bend over, and then they will tuck up into this slit. And so you have to basically pry this open to where you can actually tuck that in. So make it easier on myself here. So it'll tuck in like that. And then, you know, it'll be wrapped around. Of course, you'll have to pull it around first because it'll be attached to the top, but it'll be tucked in like that, and then when you squeeze these back together, it holds it in place. You could take a rag or something to protect the top material, and then just use some pliers to squeeze that back down. But if yours are still attached, you'll have to pry this open in order to take your old top off. And after all that, simply just lift the frame off of the old top. Lay the new top out in place of the old one, then clean the frame up before placing it back on the top. And I use a straightened coat hanger with a bend in the front and then a couple of bends in the end to pull the cable through. Be careful with any sharp edges. You don't want to damage the new top. Starting with the center screw, go back and forth to keep it aligned and pressed in as best as possible. Recrimp the spring back onto the end of the cable, and then you can attach it back to the frame. Quick tip, with the frame bent like this, it brings the cable back enough to attach easily without having to stretch the spring to get it to attach. With it flattened back out, pull the sides up and over. It takes a little bit of effort. And then align the holes for the weather strip rails. Then go ahead and attach all the rails. And when reattaching, just put a rivet in there and there. And then you'll want a rivet here and here with that top material wraps around. The top that I got had the pre-cut holes for those two and the two on the other side. Attach the rear bar that's Velcroed in place. Wait for the top to settle a bit before attaching the two middle bars. Lay a towel down, which will protect your new window. With the top halfway between open and closed, tuck the top between the two layers of the rain rail. So you'll have metal of the body, then you'll have the outer part of the rain rail, then you'll have the top, and then the inner part of the rain rail. Start with the long center bar by pressing it in the center hole. Start with the long center bar, pressing it in the center hole, then move outward to tuck everything together. And here I also like to go back and forth to keep even pressure on everything. Then do the sidebars, starting from the bolt furthest to the back of the car to the front of the car. Reassemble the interior. And then the fun part begins, which is stretching the top to connect the latches. The hardest part is definitely getting it closed at the end. It's about 80 degrees right now. It was more, 90, 95, but I waited till later in the day to actually put it onto the car. And so with it cooling down, it was a lot harder to stretch, but I basically just went back and forth, used a screwdriver kind of to pry it a little bit forward until it finally latched, and then I just pulled it tight. With that, it does cause the front middle to bow up a bit, and so there is a gap, which would obviously cause wind and rain to come in through there. But I think after a few days of it sitting in the heat, it'll stretch out a little bit, and then I'll be able to readjust it to where it's actually going to pull the front down. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. I think it took about 3 hours overall to get it done. The color is perfect. I was a little nervous that I would get the lighter color tan, which came on later years, instead of this more orange tan, which the camera image isn't picking that up very well, but I'll try and take some better images to end the video when I have some daylight tomorrow. But yeah, so that's gonna be it. So thanks for watching. Okay, so let me talk about the big mistake I made. When I decided to change the top, instead of using the original frame, I used an old frame that I had laying around. Well, it turned out that old frame actually had a bow in the front. It was bent. And so when I went through the process of putting the new top onto that old frame, it had the bend in the middle. I thought that was just from the tightness of the top. Turns out it wasn't it at all. So I ended up going back and taking the top back off and swapping to the original frame from the car, which is really the best way to do it. That way it's just gonna fit the way that it fit originally. And in doing that, I also decided to change the rain rail, which I didn't show in the video at all. My old rain rail was fine when I took it off, and then it broke during the installation. So I ordered a new one. When the new one came in, I swapped that new one in along with putting the top skin back onto the old frame. See, the front bow fits pretty well. There's not that dip in the front that there was when it was installed the first time. And with the cables in the right orientation, the top sits very nicely along the window. When the cable is in the wrong position, it actually causes the top to peel back. The cables run right along here, which actually dictates where this rests on the frame. So if the cable is just half an inch this way, the whole frame is pulled in that direction.